Welcome everybody, this is the SharePoint Developer Ecosystem, SharePoint BMP Community Call. This is the November 2019 edition, and it is November 12th. I'm actually calling from a super rainy Slovenia, a beautiful country, beautiful location, where we are in a Thrive conference. There's a lot of actually MVPs in here, and quite a nice set of attendees as well. So even though it's a small country, it's nice to see that people are finding these smaller conferences as well. It doesn't have to be a massive multi-thousand conference. Now, last week we were in Ignite, and in Ignite we announced a lot of cool stuff, which we've gone through quite a few times on the, talked about in the SharePoint Dev Weeklies. We talked about and had quite a few blog posts already coming out from the Ignite as well. And it's good to see also that community is releasing a lot of blog posts around the Ignite announcements, because that's definitely required, because there are so many things. I think the book of news from Ignite, which is a one PDF file and mentioning all of the things which were announced, was like 86 pages. So that's a pretty extensive list of things which were announced as part of the Ignite thing. Now, let's actually get moving on today, because today we're going to talk about some of the latest announcements from the Ignite. But before we go there, I'm going to do a quick update on the SharePoint development. So my name is Vesa Juvonen. I'm a principal program manager from the OneDrive SharePoint Developer Platform team, and I'm the responsible of driving the community engagement and open source and community side of the house. Now, I'm going to go through the latest news, monthly summary, and a few other details, acknowledgement of the community contributors. This is going to take roughly 15 minutes, and then we'll jump on the main topic of today. So we have the pleasure of having Melissa Torres giving us an update on the latest on hub sites and site designs and the related topics. And this is going to be pretty much what she went through on the Ignite as well, most likely, unless she has some extra things to share. And let's see when we get to that topic. But it's really around understanding how these things are evolving, what are the new possibilities around hub sites and site designs and related topics as well. Now, this is not really one of the things. Maybe you might be wondering, why do we call the SharePoint Dev monthly community call? That's kind of almost, I wouldn't say leftovers, but a lot of this stuff, what we go through quite often in the community calls, it's not necessarily uber pro development like site designs. It is more a power end user or tenant admin operations as well. But this relates on the overall understanding on what you can do in Microsoft 365. So it's important to go these through in the community calls as well. And in the end, we'll have probably some Q&A time. We'll obviously take some questions during the presentation as well. Melissa might have some friends behind the scenes answering on the questions. So if you have any questions during her presentation, you can use the chat window in the Teams for those questions as well. Now, let's actually get moving on quickly on the things. So a few typical slides, SharePoint Developer Community, just making sure that everybody is aware of all of these assets and channels, what we're having. AKMS SP Dev Community, SharePoint Framework bi-weekly calls, that's happening on every second Tuesday at 7 a.m. Pacific time. Bi-weekly SharePoint General Dev calls, that's happening on bi-weekly on Thursdays at 7 a.m. as well. The next one call is on this Thursday around the SP Generic Dev. And this is we're going to talk about on this Thursday, we're going to talk about Lookbook and the assets behind of the Lookbook site, because there's a lot of things which you can take advantage behind of the scenes as well. And then there's Paul Bullock is going to talk about the modernization updates. And there's one more topic. I think Tracy is going to talk about actually converting classic themes to modern themes. So that's a really cool topic as well for this Thursday. And then we have these monthly community calls, which are now getting more positioned as an engineering updates and engineering demos. So this time we dedicate our time with Melissa, and Melissa is going to talk about her features and the features which she owns. She is really the mother of all hubs in SharePoint Online. So she's the right person to actually talk about these things. Now, let's actually move on the slides. So a few updates, just a reminders, AKMS SP Dev Docs are documentation, videos are available, including the recordings, typically in 24 hours at the AKMS SP Dev videos, that is our YouTube channel, AKMS SP Dev issues for the development issues, and then open source, there's plenty of assets available, not just around the development topics, also around documentation and a non-developer documentation. And all of this is evolving all the time. So we're trying to extend also on the IT pro side of the house and scripts and all of that stuff. And if you're interested on those topics, please let us know, and we'll invest more time on that as well. Now, a few numbers around our community. We are growing quite hectically, and the numbers are quite impressive. This is more on letting you know that you're not the only one being active in the community as well, and letting you some insights on the numbers behind of the scenes. So SharePoint Framework usage grew 6% during October 2019. So the worldwide usage of custom SharePoint Framework components. We had 43,000 views in SharePoint Dev YouTube channel, which is quite a lot of views, which generated 220,000 watch time minutes, which is quite an impressive number, actually. I'm still tempted on starting to sell advertisements page in our YouTube. No, I'm not, actually. That's a bad joke. Now, we had 62,000 total visitors in the GitHub organizations, 6,790 requests worldwide each second through PnP open source components. That's an insane number when I think of it. 6,790 HTTP requests coming through SharePoint Online through PnP open source components. So there's a lot of activities and a lot of software which is using these things. We had 29,000 tenants using open source components in October as well. 3,500 were using the PnP tenant templates. That is by far the most used functionality behind of the scenes. And overall, in our open source side of the house, we've been now having 1,201 contributors in the GitHub, which is quite impressive, and this number is growing all the time as well. So it's good to see that people are interested on being active on the GitHub side of the house. Now, reminders on one of the really important announcements from last week, and this is really useful even though you wouldn't be a developer, or you would be more a designer, or you want to have some ideas on what can be done in modern SharePoint, is the lookbook.microsoft.com. So this is something which has been evolving now in a V2 level. Definitely a useful functionality for many of the people. You can provision, if you're a tenant administrator, you can provision the templates to your tenant as well. You can get a free trial tenant, or you can get a free Office 365 developer tenant through our channels. So lookbook.microsoft.com, please do get familiar with that one. A lot of options available, a lot of cool designs available. And if you're not a tenant administrator, you can still go to the site and have a look on innovation, what can be done around the modern SharePoint, what are the web parts, what are the functionalities which are available behind of the scenes. Now, moving on things, SharePoint Framework usage is growing fast. So just a quick update on that one. Not explicit numbers here, but you can see that the curves are looking quite nice. The adoption is growing insanely fast, not a 45-degree angle, but it's pretty insanely fast grown and being used more and more on every single week, basically. Quick update on the SharePoint Dev Weekly. Already in the last SharePoint Dev Weekly was released today, actually. We always typically record this together with Waldek, and quite often as a visitor, an MVP visitor, as an example, on Mondays, and then they go live on Tuesday. And they would go through the latest news and announcements and articles, what the community has been sharing within the past week. For the past 2 weeks, we talked about quite a lot of the announcements around the Ignite in our area of the house. So what has been announced, what it means in practice, and what are the assets behind of the scenes. This also is released now as a podcast, so you can actually get access on that one as well. So you can listen the discussion from there. Quick update on the SharePoint Dev UserVoice. Unfortunately, not a massive amount of progress in this side of the house. We've been just hammered on the other things, but we are actively working on making things happen. So the support for .NET Core and with CSUM is now the #1 item. So it bypassed the add metadata term store operation REST API or Graph API pretty recently, and both of these are actively being worked on. So the support for .NET Core, actually support for .NET Standard, is now scheduled to happen between the first calendar quarter. Now, .NET Standard will be, like I said, is planned to go live between January and March. So we will release a new NuGet package based on that. It is being actively now worked on. Managed metadata term store operations in REST API, it will be coming actually as a Graph API. Sooner or later as well. We talked about it last week in Microsoft Ignite. And a lot of the other areas here are more from, let's say, advantages or new features around the SharePoint framework, which is actively being worked on as well. And the only CSM there is to provide an ability to write manage metadata via app-only policy, which actually is already possible. In that comments of that user voice entry, we are explaining how it can be done. But I do apologize, I completely ran out of time to write that through in the official documentation, but it is supported and it's going to be documented quite soon as well. Now, let's actually move on things. So the November update, just a quick update on that one as well. The November update with the latest changes and latest open source things and updates in the projects went live earlier, actually yesterday. AKMS SP PMP, or if you go SP Dev blog, SharePoint Developer blog, you can find the latest update on here. And that lists all of the new samples and all of the new updates also from the provisioning engine side of the house or PMP PowerShell side of the house. So you'll be up to date on what's happening on those assets. We had quite a few contributors again on this month. Typical list of people, there's some new people in the list as well. And it's great to see that we always keep on having a massive list of people who are contributing. Thank you very much for helping other people in the community to be successful as well. So these are the people who contributed on our open source initiatives, open source projects, our documentation, or any of the code samples in the GitHub. So thank you for being active on the community side of the house. And these are the companies who gave their permissions, who we have a permission to show their logo in our site. So the people who contributed on previous slides are working in these companies who are giving their employees the option to all contribute in the open source as well. So basically, it's great that more and more companies are actively being involved within the open source initiatives and open source thinking on this side of the house as well. So thank you. Super important thing, and you are truly making a difference in the community side of the house. Now, from Microsoft side, there was a large list of people as well. So let's not forget about these people. Some of these are our internal community people. So they were contributing on the evenings and weekends. So they do not necessarily get paid for their contributions as well. So thank you for those people as well being active on the open source side of the house. Now, I'm ready and actually on time. So Melissa, it is 8:15 a.m. Pacific, and you are there. Excellent. So it's good to have you on a call. We haven't actually done this with you in the past, so it's good to get an update on hub sites and site designs and related topics, right?
Yeah, I'm very excited to talk to you guys about the latest. So yeah, so can I go ahead and take it away?
Please do.
Cool. So hey everyone, my name is Melissa Torres. Like Vesa mentioned, I'm a program manager on the SharePoint Experiences team, and my current areas of ownership kind of go in through SharePoint IA, what we think about your intranet architecture with hubs. I'm also responsible for site designs, and I also own some other experiences like site creation and what we kind of consider the site's Chrome. So very excited to talk to you guys. Today, I'll be delving deep into what's new from SharePoint hubs, as well as some of the site designs stuff. A lot of what I'm going to be covered actually got announced last week at Ignite. So if you guys were there, you should, this will sound familiar, although I'm excited for some conversation and I can go into a little bit more details than what I could have at Ignite. So excited to share that with all of you. So I start first with SharePoint hubs. By now I assume most people know what they are, but just in case, it's always good to level set. So SharePoint hubs is how we organize your intranet, how we recommend you organize your intranet. It gives you the capability of organizing sites together, related sites together, either which way you want, whether it's by department or business unit or division or location, subsidiary. It's really flexible. So for whatever works best for your organization, because we see it's spread the gamut. It's basically a tool that lets you do that. And then once you bring these related sites together, and by the way, it works on team sites and it works on communication sites. And I get this question asked a lot. You can also join classic sites to hubs as well, but you just don't get all of the benefits of them. And I can talk about that more in detail. But the high level concept is it's about bringing sites together. And when you do, you get kind of all the features you see listed here. You get from roll-up of news and events and site activity, which we're very excited about, to search across related sites. If you think about it, search historically either spans your entire SharePoint or your specific site. Right now, we're excited that with hubs, it searches across only that set of sites that are attached to a hub. It enables cross-site navigations with top customer ask, and we announced last week that we will be supporting audience targeting, and I'll show you in a little bit how you set that up. A consistent look and feel with theming coming across all the sites, so they really feel like part of a family. Common IA with site designs, and I'll talk about that a little bit better. And again, announced at Ignite, we're doing some permissions, making it easier for hub owners to manage permissions across the hub, and I'll be demoing it, as well as hub analytics. You can also create sites from hub, so if you want to empower your site users to be able to create new sites and automatically put them in the right place, in the right organization, you can point to them to have them create it through hubs. And we are in the middle of shipping, which I'm very excited about. I think now rolled out to 10% of prod, hub join approvals. And so if you want to control, you can not only scope hubs, so only a select set of people that you pick can join a hub, but now you can also set up an approval process using Flow so that you can even provide more finer control over what sites get attached to the hub. Which I think is pretty cool. And as always, we've always said it, hubs are created by SharePoint administrators or global administrators. That's a very intentional decision that we made to make sure that, really SharePoint administrators are in the right frame of mind to think about how they want to organize their intranet all up. And so we continue to provide that, but site owners are the ones that adopt by joining sites to hub or creating sites directly from the hub. And I'm sure that you've probably heard, we also talked about associated hubs, which is this ability to organize hubs together. And I'll be talking about that. So breaking into the specific net new stuff that we announced at Ignite that I kind of want to give you guys a cool demo of all the stuff that we have, it kind of breaks down into 4 things. I have 3 of them listed here. But one of the things that we're adding, which I think I heard from a lot of customers that was something that was really missing from current hubs is this idea of centralizing permissions. Now, one of the things I want to state about this is that when we initially rolled out hubs, we actually celebrate, and still do, by the way, the individuality of each site having its own permissions. So it's actually a great model, and we're keeping that completely in place. And so there are many hubs where you do not need to centralize permissions, and that is totally fine and totally works. This is more for this particular feature is targeted for more these scenarios where, and I'll give you an example. Within our organization, we have an E+D, or Experience Devices organization, and their hub is made up of multiple communication sites stitched together for a variety of reasons. And so this helps more of those scenarios where you kind of want to have consistent permissions across all of them, but you still want separate sites. So it really helps that. So what it'll do, it'll grant visitor access. Hub owners can enable it. It'll be not on by default, so it's something that you'll have to opt into. And site owners can at any time opt in and out. But instead of me talking about it, how about I show it? So let's jump into a cool demo here. So here I am in the Sales Hub. Should be familiar for those of you who are watching or at Ignite. And the way this will work is just when you go to site permissions, you'll now have this new pivot here called Hub. So this site, and this is cool now where I get to go into detail about how this works. So this site will contain the permissions for this particular site. And those are separated from the permissions of the hub. And so these are the permissions on the site. And when you switch over to the hub, you basically enable this feature to sync it down to the associated sites, as you see them with this toggle. And then here's where you put in the groups that you want to do that with. So in this case, I put sales, and we'll support security groups and modern groups as the entities you can kind of push down. Now you'll notice, like I mentioned, that initially when we release this feature, we're only going to support visitors. I'm already gotten asks to support owners in particular, this idea of a hub owner that is an owner on all the associated sites. And that's definitely something that we're considering. But initially, we're going to start with visitors when we initially roll out. So really quickly here, you kind of set this up, turn on the toggle, and then set the groups, and you have this people peeker. You can always remove if you need to, and it'll automatically save. And so what that does is when I switch over to this a site that I'm ready to join to the hub, and I click here, site information, pick sales. There it is. You immediately see that I get this option to sync hub permissions to the site. I can opt out if if this is a top secret project, or if I really want to keep control over who has permission on my site and I don't want to get anything from the hub, I can totally opt out. This is our promise to make it easy for people to retain their own kind of site permissions. But if I actually want to share this with the rest of my organization and make it easier to find in search and roll-ups and all that good stuff, right? Because that's part of the reason we're trying to help here, make sure that when you join your site to the hub, you make that decision to have your stuff roll up to at the hub level, from whether it's news to highlighted content to events to the site itself, and also available in search results. So I'm going to go ahead and click on save. And then immediately you'll now notice you get the hub nav, the theming. This was already green, but you get the hub nav, and then you get the site design applying, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But if I go open here, site permissions, same place as before, because we kind of are adding this to the current site permissions UI. You see these are the permissions on the site, which in this case it's only one person, because they Megan, who was building the site, which is me. But if I click on hub, now I see that both I'm syncing from the hub, and I'm getting, the marketing group is coming down at me. So again, making it super easy for me to joining a site to a hub, get down the permissions, and I don't have to manage them. Just as easily as I joined, I can leave. And so what that means is I can turn this off at any time, and it'll stop and it'll clean up those permissions. So if you, choose to share and take it back for whatever reason, or decide that the site's turning to be something more private and you no longer feel comfortable sharing it with the rest of the hub, it's really easy for you to turn it off. And at that point, you can continue to manage your permissions at the site level and not with the hub. Another question that I got was, let me go back and join this. What happens if you see, and it's back there. What happens if you leave the hub? Do the permissions get cleaned up? So here's this site, and I just wanted to show that this one's also, I believe, syncing permissions. Yeah. And you'll notice that this is showing sales. So the way that this mechanism will work is very similar to how theming comes down and how nav nodes come down. So for those of you who've been using hubs, you probably noticed that there is, or are familiar with the fact that when you make a change at the hub, it takes a couple of hours for it to reflect everywhere. And that'll be true of this as well. We do it a little bit more aggressively than we do for theming and we do for nav, because of the urgency that it is something like permissions. But within a couple of hours, and I'm talking about 2 hours, and by the way, we're still kind of testing that, the permissions should be reflected. So then I would go here and see that sales would no longer show up. So going back to the question, what happens when you leave the hub? So here's a site that's joined to the hub, and like I was showing, it's sharing permissions from the hub. So it's showing these two. And then I can easily go to site information. Come on. Choose to none, choose to leave the hub at that point. And we take that unjoin action as a signal, basically, to clean up after ourselves. And so in that moment, when you go back to site permissions, now that pivot is gone. And so we take that action of you unjoining to go out and remove those groups that had previously been added because it was connected to the hub. So that's in essence how site permission, hub permissions will work. So again, really trying to make it easy for hub owners to help site owners get permissions consistently across any number. We're starting first with visitors. It's an opt-in model, so people can opt in or opt out as needed. Really much adapting to the previous model for hubs, where site owners can choose to join and unjoin. So we're following the footsteps from there. So yeah.
If you don't mind, actually, Melissa, can we take a few questions at this point?
Absolutely.
So just in case,
Absolutely.
do it in sequence. So there was Chris Kent was asking, so the permission syncing implied that there's a job keeping individual SP group memberships the same. You actually mentioned that question as well. So there is a delay on getting the memberships replicated, right?
Correct.
And then View Cameron said that could we actually add an REST API to force the sync, which is an interesting idea.
Yes, that's a great question. So right now, the only thing that forces the sync is like the act of joining and unjoining. So if you really wanted to fetch the latest, you can or either join or unjoin to the hub, or turn the toggle on or off to force the sync. But yeah, that's a separate API or control for that. That's something I can follow up on that one.
Cool. Then there was a question, is there an interface to see which site associated to a hub have opted in/out for the sync permissions? That's an interesting thing as well from a visibility perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. As of right now, we don't have that. We are talking about, how can you look up the list of associated sites and see which ones are syncing to hubs and which ones the permissions are not. When we initially release, we probably won't have that, but definitely an improvement we can do. I was just talking yesterday to the admin center folks about how we would we want to surface some of this goodness up in the admin center, where you already in the admin UI, you can actually filter your sites by a hub and see all the sites that are joined to the hub. Would this be a property that would show up there? So those are the things we're starting to think about, but initially on release, we won't have that capability.
Yeah, and then there was just related on the option of disabling the sync, and there was a good comment actually from Oliver Sizer and from Monday Coffee related on could we add a support for disabling the theme sync as well? So in certain scenarios that might be useful, but good feedback for you at least.
Yeah, absolutely. Theme sync, totally valid ask. I've gotten that multiple times. It's a little bit more complicated than we would like, because when we think about it, and just probably giving you more information that you guys are asking for, but I'll share it anyway. We've been talking about this idea that if we disable the theme, at least the hub navigation at the top should retain the theme from the hub to ensure that it's still part of the family. But that is a little bit of a more work that we would like. So we're just not there yet. And so it's definitely something that's in the backlog, but not something that we're working or looking to work on relatively soon.
Cool. And then there was actually a really good question from Stefan. Actually, I answered that, but then I realized that actually I answered that from slightly in the wrong way, because Stefan had a question of will the permissions sync only to group connected site or communication sites too? Because group associated team sites only have a support for a certain set of groups. And then communication sites have an unlimited support of permissions. So is there any limitations related on permission syncing? Just to confirm.
Yeah, great question. So I would say this is solely on the SharePoint side of permissions that we are doing this on. So if you can use a modern group at the hub to push down permissions, but it's not like if your associated site is a team site, as an example, that's group connected, we're not adding those people to that modern group. It's completely separate. We're just adding them. We're just granting permissions to the site container, if that makes sense. Yep. So it works, but at the end of the day, it works across both site types. So it works on comm sites and it works on team sites. With team sites, it's that caveat that doing this will not grant access to the group resources. It is just granting access to the site itself.
Good. I think we need to move on. There's a active discussion in the chat, but I don't want to steal all of your times on a Q&A because I think there's a lot of people who want to see even more.
Okay. Cool. So that's Hub permissions. And very excited. And please share with me, Vesa, at the end, like if you could copy paste the chat window so I can read through people's feedback and comments. That'd be super helpful for me.
Absolutely.
Cool. So next up is Hub Analytics. Now, sadly, I'm sad to report that unbeknownst to me, they had to pull it back from the demo tenant, so it's not available here anymore, even though it was available last Thursday. So I don't have a demo of it for you, so I apologize for that. But I can talk about what it's going to do and what it will look like. So basically, Hub Analytics was born out of customer ask for, well, I have this site usage information, which is great for me, it gives me unique users, and views on a site. But I'd love to get more understanding around, I actually manage my hub. I actually manage my department sites or my regional sites, and I need to get an understanding of how all my sites are doing. And so Hub Analytics was born out of meeting that need. And so what it'll let you do is at the hub level, you will get what we call an aggregated view of who your, of counts around viewers, counts on visits. And so that way you're not only looking at one site, you'll have a switcher here. So you'll be able to still switch, which is important, between your hub site and the rest of your hub. So that way you'll still retain your hub site details. So if you only care about what, the traffic or details of what's happening on your hub site, that'll still remain intact. But you get this additional capability of seeing not only what's important on the hub site, but what's important across the hub. So it'll contain total viewers as well as total views. And then as you scroll down, it won't have site traffic because that's specific to a current site or popular platforms. But it will have content, like most popular content across your hub. And that'll include things like news, which I think is super cool to be able to see news that's popular across your hub, popular files, and another thing that I'm very passionate about is popular sites. So you'll be able to see, out of all the sites that are joined to the hub, which ones are the most popular, either on viewers or visit or views. So you can take action to say, hey, if you have a culture, let's call it like that, a culture site connected to your hub and there's not a lot of traffic there, maybe now I should promote it, on the hub site homepage, raise its prominence, maybe send a news post of it, and raise more of its awareness because people are not finding it or it's not getting enough, traffic as the others are. So it'll really enable you to do, to have that insights into what's happening across your hub. This is where we're starting with. Definitely more things. I would say it's similar to how site usage was born, where we started with very simple graphics and insights, and then we've continued to grow. Like you see here, we've continued to grow with popular platforms and insights on what time your site's being used for. They're also adding for site analytics an ability for you to download into Excel, like the data. So if you want to keep history of it or actually mulge it to meet your needs, you'll have a download option. For Hub Analytics, it won't be there on day one yet, but this, again, I would say it's similar in the journey. It's it's the first step, and then we'll learn from it and get feedback from folks like yourselves, and hopefully grow it some more as time progresses. So sorry I couldn't show it, but hopefully that detailed explanation kind of helps you understand where we're going with it. Cool. Any questions on Hub Analytics?
A quick comment from Mike, which was, does Hub Analytics require synced permissions to collection to see the analytics? So are there any requirements related on the permission side of the house?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So you'll have to have access. Hub, same as site analytics, is available only to the owners of the hub site. Hub Analytics will only be available to those that are site owners on the hub site. So not everybody will be able to see that view. So that's one thing. And then obviously, same other thing, we will have to, and don't quote me on this because these are the details that we're still kind of figuring out. We'll likely not show you stuff that you don't have permission to. because we like the hub owner is not an elevated permission role or anything where like they get to see more than other people do, and so we're still kind of working out those details.
Cool. It's good to say that don't quote me on this one, but then we're getting the call recorded. But hey,
totally fair. I can come, like once we're a little bit closer, I can come back and be like, hey, remember that call when I said don't quote me on this? Yeah. Quote me on this #official statement.
Cool. I think we're good to go. I'll collect some other questions during the day, and let's see if we're going to get to them in the later part of the demo.
Cool. And then, so the last thing I wanted to highlight before we talk about associated hubs, the last thing I wanted to highlight is just we are very excited for a couple improvements on cross-site navigation. The first one being a very simple change. So if you have a logo, like you see here in the hub site settings, if you have a logo, and right now you could choose to have a logo or not have a logo, but you always have to have the name. Well, we're giving you this control to be able to hide the name in navigation. And what this will do is this little label here, global sales, will go away. And so you will just be left with a logo, and then you can follow up with the navigation nodes. So it's a very small change, but for a lot, we heard customer feedback that some folks use a logo that's actually the name or the letters of their organization or the department. And so then you'd have a repeat, right, of like logo name and then nav nodes. And so for those organizations that have that, you'll have that level of control to be able to hide the name and just keep the logo. So very small change, but it's worth and important when it comes to branding. And then the other feature that I wanted to call out, which we talked about last week, is this ability to audience target. And so you see here these nodes being audience targeted. So you'll be able to, when you're editing navigation, there'll be a switch where you'll be able to turn audience targeting for your navigation. And once you do, when you click on any node, you'll have this box showed up that says audience targeting, and you'll be able to add security groups or modern groups into them. And so here's an example of I'm using the New York marketing groups. We will support up to 10, and then you click OK, and you'll be able to save. Now, what's cool about this is that when you're in edit mode as an editor, you see everything. But then once you click save and you cancel, you won't see everything because it'll give you a more realistic view of what you're supposed to see. So let me refresh here. So here you'll see that I'm seeing Seattle events and not New York events because Megan is based off Seattle and not New York. But as an editor, you see it everything, so you can quickly get a layout for your entire navigation, and then actually see what your real user would see in those cases. So very excited. This is one of the top customer request. So it's our starting point in this journey, and so I'm sure you guys are familiar with. There's also audience targeting being rolled out to news and highlighted content for content in those web parts. And so this is the next step from that to add it to navigation. And even though I'm highlighting here in the hub navigation because, I'm all about hubs, it actually works also on associated sites. And it also works on the site, like the local site nav, as well as the footer on communication sites. Cool.
Excellent. Quick question related on the audience targeting. This is a valid question, but this always comes up. Laurent is asking that, hey, what if we had a lot of audiences? Does it impact the performance?
Yeah, so we due to those concerns with having too many, we're capping you at 10 to keep you safe. So you can't populate more than 10 groups in there. So that's not a limit we will never increase. It's more of a limit as a starting point. So we can measure the perf. We can ensure that this is, has good reliability, has good performance, and then make improvements to make sure that's in a good state before we increase it. So that's why we're capping it at 10.
Yeah. And then Urs is asking also, will we get an audience targeting also on upcoming metadata-driven navigation? And the answer is potentially yes. The audience targeting is something which we definitely are looking at to include in general in the product more efficiently. What it will be, how it will look like, but all of those details will be defined later. So.
Yes, yeah. I would say we're starting with the current navigation, what we call, for those of you who know behind the scenes, what we call the quick launch navigation, which is the source for site navigation, and what we call the hub navigation, which behind the scenes is top nav. Yeah.
So we have now 11 minutes before you need to go and drop your kid to the school. So
yeah. So let's keep going. I will. We might have to do another one on site design. Sorry, but
that's absolutely welcome as well. So we can concentrate on a hub side on this one, and then do another one on site designs. More than welcome.
Okay. So I'll try to cover the next two quick enough. If not, more than happy to come back, because I don't want folks who joined for just site designs to not get what they were looking for. Okay. So if you could start thinking about your journey, you start, we talked about in previous sessions, I'm sure you've heard about the home site, and now we've just talked about hubs and the improvements we're doing for hubs. But we definitely understand there's a need for hubs to be related to each other. So I'm excited to talk about that. We are giving you that capability with what we call associated hubs. And so in this example, this diagram that I'm showing you, think about, how a sales organization might be pretty big, and it might actually have offices dedicated to that for Asia Pacific and Europe as an example. And they're big enough regions that they have a whole hub for themselves. So in this case, they're part of the bigger sales organization, and so want to be part of the bigger sales hub, but at the same time have totally valid scenarios for having their own hubs. And so what we're allowing you to do is to now establish a connection between these, so it looks more like kind of what you're seeing here. So I do want to be clear about what this means. So similar to how you associate a site to a hub, you'll be able to associate a hub to another hub to bring together related hubs. And once you do that, you'll be able to search across hubs. So as an example, in this example I've been calling out, when you perform a search in sales, it'll include results from the sales APAC and sales Europe, but not only those hub sites, but their actual hubs themselves. So that means things from their associated sites as well. It'll also do roll-up of news and activity. So you'll be able to roll up news from APAC and Europe, not only the hub site, but the hubs themselves. And we make it easier to curate hub-to-hub navigation. We are not stacking navs. You're not getting a nav on the top of a nav on the top of a nav. We already have too many. If you consider the Office 365 suite bar at the top, and then you have the hub nav, and then you have the header. We're not adding a fourth layer to that party, but we're making it easier for you to be able to connect these in your current nav model. And last but not least, it's IT controlled. So similar as IT creates hubs, you'll be able to connect them together. So how that'll work is if I switch over, so here's the Sales Asia Pacific hub that we were just talking about. And if I click on hub site settings, similar how you go to site information to join your site to a hub, you'll have this associated hub field where you'll be able to pick global sales. For purposes of this demo, I already kind of done that for ourselves. So it's already here connected to global sales. And, realistically, at this level, you don't really see a change because we still want you to celebrate the current hub that you're in. But one thing I recommend is, again, just because we're not introducing a new layer of nav, you can easily set up a connection yourself here by, adding a link to sales and going from here to there. So something that you're in total control of. So now you're here. And if I do a search here for ideas, you will see that this is coming from Sydney Ambassadors, which is actually from the Asia Pacific. So again, that's that hub to hub. So from this hub, you're already searching information that's in another hub. And if I click here on edit, you can build aggregated views. So clicking here, when you select sites today, And in this case, you'll see this little decoration here, it's Asia Pacific, that says hub, but now you'll be able to pick hub and associated sites. And that'll bring this information not only from that hub, but from its associated sites. So giving you more control over how to do rollups and what rollups should be showing up here. And I'm doing it all in one web part, but you can think about adding multiple web parts or 2 web parts, one that's like news from this hub, you know, top news, and then here's news from the regions or news from, you know, whatever you kind of want to build, but you can. And that's the cool thing about that. So you have that capability. And when it comes to navigation, like I talked about, so here's me, this is current Sales Hub navigation, and we're just making it easier so that you can go here, and I have this R Teams. I can go here and you'll have this option called Associated Hubs. And when I click OK, we automatically look at the hubs that were connected to this one and bring that for you. Now, this list is not dynamic. It doesn't get automatically updated, but it just gives you that extra helps. You don't have to go grab those links or know what those relationships are, so that then you can easily add it to your nav. And so, you know, it's really what we're really empowering with this feature, or what we're really focusing on, is about search, discovery, and making it easier to curate your navigation. And that's kind of the goal that we're targeting with this.
Related on that one, there was a good question on, are there limits on the number of hub association layers that can be created?
Ah, interesting.
Everybody's always looking for limits, right?
Yeah. So there is a limit. So hubs today are limited to 2,000. So you can't have more than 2,000 hubs, because that's the total limit of hubs. In terms of layers, we are capping it at 3. So what that means is, you know, if I go back to my trusty, slide here, you can only do 3 levels. So you could have one more underneath for Sales APAC. Let's say you had one for Australia, but that would be it. And really the reason beyond that is search, is why we're capping it at that current level.
Makes sense.
And I've spoken when we started this investigating for this feature. I believe I spoke to some of you about this, and so 3 seemed to be at the time like what would meet the most customer needs, and anything beyond that was starting to go back into the world of probably going too deep.
Makes perfect sense.
Any other questions on this?
No, that's it for the hub side of the house. Now we have 3 minutes. I'm just conscious about the time. School is important, so you need to take care.
Yeah, so for site scripts and site designs, do you think it's best to cover what I can in 3 minutes, or
I don't think so, actually. I think we need to, let's schedule you on one of the bi-weekly calls, if possible. I'll get that one offline, because I don't think it's worthwhile to go there even for a few minutes, because it's not that beneficial. Now I can actually share my screen, and let's go back on the slides, and let's see if there's any questions. There was a question related on, will hub search include people? Was one of the questions.
Great question. Not right now. It's definitely something that Karem is looking at improvements overall for search, and you know what that means for hubs. But as of right now, not currently.
Okay. Then there was a kind of a, I don't know if this is confusing, but there was a comment related on hub site content type syndication to replace classic site content type hub. So how does that relate between each other?
Yes. So great question. So you guys probably heard that Sean Squires talked about that a little bit at Ignite. So they are working on a brand new version of the content type hub stuff, and it's going to be global, but they do have plans to bring it at the scope of the hub. I don't have exact details of the timing for that. But the goal would be similar functionality that you would expect that they announce at the global level, but at the hub level at that point. So you'd set it up at the hub, and now all the associated sites would get it. Today, you know, we can you could do it through the use of in site designs, but it's not really a sync. It's a one-time job. And so the goal is to make it a little bit more richer than that.
Yep, makes sense. And now the final question, because I know you're hard limited, and there was there's 2 persons asking around this one or a similar topic. So is the home site a hub site, or is it excluded from the levels if you set the home site as a hub site? So is the home site calculated on the levels or not?
That's a great question. So I'll separate it by separating the 2 things for a moment. So a home site is just a site that you mark up and you enable to have a set of features. Now your home site can be a hub, and in many cases that makes sense. Like for example, in Microsoft, our home site is a hub as well because they have multiple sites that they use to manage the content at the Microsoft level. With that said, you can connect. You could connect to that. So you could do that, but at that point it's a little bit diluted because search already at the home site is global. So it's already spanning everything. So why would you, right? So I would think a little bit more. You can do it, but I would think a little bit more from an IA perspective, whether it's bang for buck at that point. Because one of the things that setting up the home site feature does is that it turns your search to be global. And so if you want it to be global at that point, then you're not getting that benefit. And by the way, what I showed for bringing up the news rollups, that ability to that I showed bring up Asia Pacific at the Sales Hub level, it's going to be shipped as part of the associated hubs feature, but it'll be available on any site. So you don't have to be in a hub to take advantage of it, which is one of the cool things about it too. So you could on your home site not make it a hub if you don't have a need, and actually pick sales and pick sales Asia Pacific and pick Europe and do the roll up there if that's kind of what you wanted to do.
Yeah. Cool. I think that sums up this one. Now there was a comment, just multiple comments on, hey, please remember to share the slides. So I'll include the slides on the blog post like we do typically, and I will get the slides from Melissa and I will include them in the presentation which we share. So that should be fine, right, Melissa?
Cool. Yes, I will send it to you right after I get back. And
absolutely.
I'll drop off now. Okay.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you everybody
very much, everyone.
Good. But that's it basically for today. I'm just watching if there's any other questions on the chat window which we haven't answered. Obviously, if it's super hub specific and I can't answer that, then it's a separate thing. Also, maybe the note, unfortunately, last Thursday, we had really cool demos from the SharePoint Framework Community Call. All of that demo recording failed. So I'm looking into doing re-recordings of upcoming 1.10 version of SharePoint Framework demos on this Thursday. And I will looking into doing another recording with Luca as well. So you'll get a cool demos around what is a fluid framework. And the recording of the last week's SharePoint Framework call is available, but you didn't say the screen sharing didn't work. And I do not understand why and how that happened because it was working fine during the call. But apparently, the Microsoft Teams bot or the recording bot from Stream didn't catch up the screen sharing, which is a pity. Good. Is a home site a hub or its own? Is a flavor of communication site to be hubified? Ralph, on the first question, the home site, any site can be a home site technically, and there's actually even a separate between a home site and a root site. So a home site can be a hub if you want, but it doesn't have to be a hub. So it is basically same as with hub site, same as with home site. It is a setting related on the site, and it can be technically even a group associated team site. So it doesn't have to be a communication site. So there are attributes. There's no underlying site definition or a template behind of the scenes. When you set these attributes on a site, then they will light up functionalities. And when you disable the attribute, then the light functionalities will go away. Good. Yes, on Ali Robinson's comment, it would be cool when she comes back on a site designs if you can cover some hub governance guidance. But I'm being conscious about that one. Let's definitely get Melissa back on the calls, community calls, and we will always release the agenda a few days before, so you'll know when she's back as the time is suitable. Now, and let's have a separate one for site designs and then follow up on the hub as well, because there's clearly a lot of interest on that one. There's a question related on the multilingual side of the house from Priyank, and we did announce multilingual to be available and supported in modern SharePoint pages in Ignite last week. So that is definitely available. I would recommend to have a look on Jeff Teeper's keynote recording from Monday last week, where actually he had 24 demos, and then he walked through, for example, the content authoring improvements and Project Cortex and many other cool things. It is a really cool 1-hour session with 24 demos where he explains the latest and greatest on the platform from a SharePoint, OneDrive, Office client perspective. So really cool stuff. Anything you can talk about now post Ignite, SPFX? Well, we're running out of time. There's obviously anything what's in Ignite is fully open and recorded, and there's no secrets around that one. So that we can talk about whatever from that perspective. Scheduled publishing is supported in modern pages as well, announced in Ignite last week. So that's definitely available. Is there an API to get site analytics? I need to follow up on that one. I don't think we actually have a documented API on that. Has enable SPO com site been abandoned on the favor of Invokes SPO site swap? And I can't confirm that yet at this point. I would have to talk with DC around that one. Technically, enable SPO com site is quite interesting for classic theme sites as well. So you would be able to do that across the tenant. So that discussion is still ongoing. How do we want to do that? Now, we are hitting the hour, so I do apologize. I can still see questions coming up, but I think it's better for everybody that we try to keep the hour as an hour, because there might be other commitments as well. So, but thank you everybody for joining. We were hitting 229 attendees today, which is a great number. We didn't luckily hit the 250 limit because that would have an implications that people can't actually join in. But thank you for this one. Recording will be out in 24 hours. Thank you, Ralph, 235. Okay. Recording will be out in 24 hours in the normal YouTube channel, like where we release all of the recordings of all of our community calls and all of the demos. And the blog post will be available in the SharePoint Dev blog within 24 hours as well. So thank you everybody for joining. Thank you for your input. Thank you for your feedback and suggestions. Those are super important because we built this product for you, not for us. We want to address your requests, your features, your capabilities. So thank you for joining and giving your input on these things. But that's it for now. Thank you, and see you hopefully on Thursday in the SharePoint General Dev community call. And our agenda will come out potentially later today or early tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye.